The coffee maker gurgled its familiar morning song as Sarah Chen stared out the kitchen window of her small apartment. 3 years. 3 years since she'd hung up her combat gear and traded plasma rifles for coffee cups. Yet her hands still trembled slightly as she reached for her mug. The tremor wasn't fear. It was the ghost of adrenaline that never quite left a soldier's system. Her reflection in the window showed a woman in her late 20s with short black hair and dark eyes that had seen too much. The scar running from her left temple to her jawline had faded, but never disappeared, a permanent reminder of the Battle of Kepler 442b, where humanity had made its stand against the Zephyrian Empire. The comlink on her wrist buzzed softly. Sarah glanced at it with practiced indifference. Probably another job offer from some corporation wanting to hire experienced security personnel. She'd turned down dozens of them. All she wanted was to blend into the crowd, to be just another face in the morning rush of Neo-Singapore. Her current job at the shipping depot was perfect for that goal. Nobody asked questions about her past. Nobody cared that she could field strip a pulse rifle in 12 seconds. And nobody knew that Sarah Chen had once been Lieutenant Commander Chen of the Terran Defense Corps, holder of the Stellar Cross and veteran of 16 major engagements against the galaxy's most feared alien armies. The apartment building's elevator wheezed as it carried her down to street level. Mrs. Patterson from 4B smiled and waved, completely unaware that the quiet young woman beside her had once called down orbital strikes that turned entire battlefields to glass. Sarah smiled back, cherishing these small, normal interactions. The walk to work took her through the bustling market district where vendors hawked everything from synthetic fruits to imported luxuries from the outer colonies. Children laughed as they chased holographic butterflies between the stalls, their innocence protected by treaties Sarah had helped secure with her blood and that of her fallen comrades. At the depot, her supervisor Jake Martinez greeted her with his usual enthusiasm. "Morning, Sarah. Ready for another exciting day of inventory management?" His joke fell flat when he noticed her expression. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Sarah realized she'd been staring at a newsfeed displaying footage from the Frontier Wars memorial ceremony. Admiral Torres was speaking about humanity's greatest military victories, and for a moment, the camera had panned across the wall of heroes. Even from this distance and angle, Sarah could make out some familiar names etched in stone, friends who would never get the chance to live a normal life. "Just tired," she lied, turning away from the screen. Long night. The morning passed in comfortable routine. Sarah scanned packages, updated shipping manifests, and tried not to think about how her enhanced reflexes made her twice as fast as her coworkers. During lunch break, she sat alone in the break room, picking at a synthetic sandwich while scrolling through apartment listings. Maybe it was time to move again, find somewhere even quieter. That's when the emergency broadcasts began. Every screen in the building suddenly switched to the Terran Emergency Network. The familiar blue and gold logo made Sarah's blood run cold before the anchor even spoke. "This is a Priority Alpha emergency broadcast. Unknown vessels have been detected entering the Sol system. All civilian traffic is suspended immediately. Citizens are advised to remain indoors and await further instructions." The break room erupted in nervous chatter, but Sarah heard none of it. Her training had kicked in automatically, and she was already processing tactical information. Unknown vessels in Sol meant they'd bypass the outer defense grids. That was supposed to be impossible unless... Her comlink exploded with incoming messages. Emergency codes she hadn't seen in 3 years flooded her display, each one carrying maximum priority encryption. Her hands moved without conscious thought, entering her old command authorization. The messages decrypted instantly. Immediate recall. All reserve officers report to nearest military installation. Terra Defense Protocol 7, active authorization. Admiral Torres, Terran Defense Command Protocol 7. Sarah's sandwich fell forgotten to the floor. She'd helped write Protocol 7 during the darkest days of the war, when defeat seemed inevitable and Earth itself was threatened. It was the last resort plan, the one they'd hoped never to use. "Sarah?" Jake's voice seemed to come from very far away. "You're white as a sheet. What's wrong?" She looked up at him, this kind man who knew nothing about wars or aliens or the weight of command decisions. For a moment she considered lying again, pretending this was just another emergency broadcast that would blow over in a few hours. Then her comm link chimed with an encrypted voice message. Admiral Torres's familiar, gravelly voice filled her earpiece. Commander Chen, I know you want your quiet life, but the galaxy isn't going to let you have it. We need you. Humanity needs you. There are ships out there unlike anything we've seen before, and they're not responding to any attempts at communication. Report to Luna Base immediately. That's an order, soldier. Sarah closed her eyes and felt the last 3 years of carefully constructed normalcy crumble around her. When she opened them again, Jake stepped back involuntarily. Something had changed in her expression, a hardness that spoke of command authority and difficult decisions. I have to go, she said quietly, standing and gathering her things. I'm sorry, but I won't be coming back. What are you talking about? Where are you going? Sarah paused at the break room door, looking back at the confused faces of her co-workers. These people represented everything she'd fought to protect: the right to live ordinary lives, to worry about mundane problems, to exist without fear of alien invasion or interstellar war. I'm going back to work, she said finally. My real work. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in her apartment one last time, holding the sealed case she'd hoped never to open again. Inside lay her dress uniform, her medals, and her service weapon, a custom plasma pistol that had saved her life more times than she could count. She'd promised herself she was done with all of it. But as she looked out the window at the normal, peaceful city below, Sarah knew that some promises were meant to be broken. Somewhere out there, unknown ships carried unknown threats toward the world she'd sworn to protect. Her quiet life would have to wait. She sealed the case and headed for the spaceport, leaving Sarah Chen, the shipping clerk, behind forever. Lieutenant Commander Chen was reporting for duty. The command center of Luna Base hummed with controlled urgency as Sarah immersed herself in the sensor data. 3 massive holographic displays surrounded her workstation, each one showing different aspects of the mysterious vessels. After 8 hours of analysis, she was beginning to see patterns that made her deeply uncomfortable. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the base's chief xenobiologist, appeared at her shoulder carrying 2 cups of coffee. Any breakthrough insights from our mysterious visitors? Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully. Unfortunately, yes. And I don't like what I'm seeing. She gestured to the central display, which showed a time-lapse analysis of the ship's movement patterns. Watch this carefully. Notice how they adjust their formation every few hours. The display showed the alien vessels shifting positions in subtle but precise movements, maintaining their geometric perfection while adapting to the gravitational influences of the planets they passed. It's like they're dancing, Elena observed. But why would automated systems need to make those adjustments? That's just it. I don't think they're automated. Sarah pulled up another screen showing energy pattern analysis. Look at these readings. Each ship has a different energy signature, and those signatures fluctuate in ways that suggest biological processes. But here's the really disturbing part. She highlighted specific data points on the graph. The fluctuations aren't random. They're synchronized across all 6 vessels like a heartbeat or breathing pattern. These ships aren't just alive, they're connected somehow. They might be individual organisms, or they could be organs of something larger. Elena's face paled as the implications hit her. A hive mind? Possibly. Or something even worse. Sarah switched to a tactical overlay showing human fleet positions. We've been thinking about this all wrong. We're preparing to fight 6 separate ships, but we might be facing a single entity with 6 bodies. Admiral Torres's voice cut across the command center. Commander Chen, report to the Situation Room immediately. We have developments. Sarah found Torres standing before a massive holographic map of the inner solar system. The red icons representing the alien ships had moved significantly closer, but their formation remained unchanged. More troubling were the new yellow icons scattered across the display. Human vessels moving to intercept. Admiral Hassan's fleet has taken position near Mars, Torres explained without preamble. 43 ships, including the carrier Perseverance and 2 dreadnoughts. He's requesting permission to make contact. Admiral, based on my analysis, I strongly recommend against direct confrontation. Sarah quickly uploaded her findings to the tactical display. These vessels appear to be part of a collective consciousness. If we attack one, we may provoke a response from all of them. Captain Martinez from Fleet Communications looked up from his station. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the alien vessels. First communication since they appeared. The room fell silent as Martinez routed the signal through the main speakers. What emerged wasn't language or mathematics, it was something far more disturbing. A rhythmic pulsing that seemed to bypass the ears and resonate directly in the brain. Several officers winced and stepped back from the speakers. "Turn it off," Torres ordered, but the sound continued for several more seconds before fading. Sarah felt a cold chill run down her spine. That wasn't a message. That was a scan. "Explain." "The frequency pattern. It's designed to interact with neural tissue. They were reading us, learning how our brains work." Sarah's hands flew over her workstation controls, pulling up biological scan data from the base's medical sensors. Everyone in this room just had their neural patterns analyzed. Dr. Vasquez looked horrified. "You're saying they can read minds?" "Not read exactly, but they can map neural structures, identify decision-making patterns, emotional responses. They're learning how humans think." Sarah paused as a more disturbing possibility occurred to her. "And if they can read our patterns, they might be able to influence them." Torres immediately activated the base-wide communication system. "All personnel, this is Admiral Torres. Effective immediately. All crew are to report to medical for neural shielding. Anyone experiencing unusual thoughts, compulsions, or sensory distortions is to report to the medical bay immediately." The gravity of their situation was becoming clear. They weren't just facing superior technology. They were confronting an enemy that could potentially turn their own minds against them. "Admiral," Communications Officer Martinez called out urgently, "we're receiving distress signals from Admiral Hassan's fleet. They report unusual crew behavior." The main display switched to show feeds from the human fleet near Mars. The images were deeply disturbing. Crew members on various ships were standing motionless at their stations, staring at their displays with vacant expressions. On the bridge of the Perseverance, Admiral Hassan himself stood frozen, his mouth moving soundlessly. "They're in our people's heads," Sarah said grimly. "This is why the ships haven't shown hostile intent. They don't need to destroy us, they can control us." Torres' face was stone. "Options, Commander." Sarah's mind raced through tactical scenarios, each one worse than the last. "We need to isolate any crew that's been exposed and get our ships away from the alien vessels immediately. The neural influence seems to have limited range. What about Admiral Hassan's fleet? If we can't break the connection, they're lost. Worse than lost, they could be turned against us." The command center erupted in urgent activity as Torres began issuing orders. "All ships are to maintain maximum distance from the alien vessels. Any crew showing signs of neural influence are to be isolated immediately. Dr. Vasquez, I need you to develop countermeasures against mental influence." "Admiral," Martinez interrupted again, his voice tight with stress. "The Perseverance is changing course. They're heading directly for Earth." The tactical display updated to show the massive carrier breaking formation and accelerating toward the inner system. Its escort ships followed in precise formation, their crews presumably under the same alien influence. Sarah felt the familiar weight of command decisions pressing down on her. "We have to stop them. If those ships reach Earth orbit under alien control..." 17,000 crew members, Torres said quietly, including Admiral Hassan. "You're suggesting we fire on our own people. I'm suggesting we save 8 billion people on Earth by stopping 17,000 who are no longer acting under their own will." Sarah's voice was steady despite the horror of what she was proposing. "Admiral, they're not our people anymore. They're weapons now." Torres stared at the display showing the approaching human ships, her face reflecting the terrible calculus of command. In the frontier wars, such decisions had been made against alien enemies. This was different. These were human crews, human ships, friends and colleagues who had served with honor. "There has to be another way," Dr. Vasquez said desperately. "Some method to break the neural influence." "Maybe," Sarah agreed, "but not in the time we have. Admiral, I need to take a small task force and intercept those ships before they reach Earth. If there's a way to save the crews, we'll find it, but we can't let them get to the homeworld." Torres closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them, they held the cold resolve that had made her one of humanity's greatest military leaders. "Very well. Take the Valiant and whatever escort ships you need. Your mission is to stop the Perseverance and her escorts by any means necessary." As Sarah prepared to leave the command center, Torres caught her arm one last time. "Sarah, I need you to understand, if you can't save those crews, if the only option is to destroy our own ships..." "I understand, Admiral." The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Sarah's voice carried the weight of all the impossible decisions she'd made during the war. I'll do what needs to be done. But as she headed for the shuttle bay, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this enemy was unlike anything humanity had faced before. They weren't just fighting for territory or resources, they were fighting for the very essence of what made them human. And the enemy was already inside their heads. The shuttle ride to Luna Base felt both eternal and instantaneous. Sarah sat in the military transport alongside 24 other recalled officers, their faces showing the same mix of determination and reluctance she felt. Some she recognized from the old days. Commander Williams from the Engineering Corps, Captain Rodriguez from Tactical Intelligence, and in the back corner, Major Okafor, whose cybernetic arm gleamed under the cabin lights. None of them spoke during the journey. There was nothing to say that wasn't already understood. They were all veterans of the frontier wars, soldiers who had earned their peace through blood and sacrifice. Now that peace was ending, and they were heading back into the darkness they'd fought so hard to escape. Luna Base hadn't changed much in 3 years. The same gray corridors, the same recycled air carrying hints of ozone and metal polish, the same sense of barely controlled chaos that characterized all military installations. Sarah's dress uniform felt strange after so long in civilian clothes, but her muscle memory guided her through the familiar maze of passages toward the briefing rooms. Admiral Torres waited in Conference Room Alpha, her silver hair pulled back in the same severe bun Sarah remembered. The Admiral's dark eyes swept the assembled officers as they filed in, and Sarah caught a flicker of relief when their gazes met. Torres had been her mentor during the war, the one who'd shaped a frightened young recruit into one of humanity's most effective military commanders. "Take your seats," Torres said without preamble. "What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. Before we begin, understand that you're all here because you represent the best tactical minds humanity has ever produced. What we're facing requires that expertise." The lights dimmed and a holographic display materialized above the conference table. Sarah's breath caught as she recognized the tactical grid. It was the Sol system, complete with planetary orbits, defense platforms, and civilian traffic patterns. But there were new elements on the display. Red icons moving in formations she'd never seen before. 6 hours ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected these vessels, Torres continued, highlighting the red icons. They appeared at the edge of the system without any of the usual signatures associated with hyperspace or warp drive activation. "We don't know how they got there, and we don't know what they want." Commander Williams leaned forward. "Have we attempted communication? Every frequency, every protocol we know. They're not responding to anything, not even the universal mathematical sequences. They're simply maintaining formation and moving toward the inner system at approximately 0.07 light speed." Sarah studied the movement patterns, her tactical training automatically analyzing the data. "Their formation is wrong," she said suddenly, earning surprised looks from the other officers. "I mean, it's not wrong, it's perfect. Too perfect. Look at the intervals between ships, the geometric precision of their positioning. No organic crew flies like that." Torres nodded grimly. "That's what our analysts think too. The ships appear to be under automated control, but the technology behind them is unlike anything in our databases. They're massive, each one is roughly the size of a dreadnought, but they're not built like any ship we've encountered." The display zoomed in on one of the vessels, revealing a structure that defied conventional starship design. Instead of the familiar hull patterns of human Zephyrian or Korthax ships, this vessel appeared to be grown rather than built. Its surface rippled with organic curves and strange protrusions that seemed to pulse with their own light. Captain Rodriguez whistled softly. "That's not a ship. That's a living thing." "We're not certain about that either," Torres admitted. "What we do know is that they've ignored our defensive platforms and shown no hostile intent so far. But their trajectory puts them on a direct course for Earth, and they'll reach lunar orbit in approximately 18 hours. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Sarah's mind raced through possible scenarios, each one worse than the last. If these ships were truly under automated control, there would be no negotiating, no diplomatic solution. And if they were alive somehow, what do you need us to do? Major Okafor asked, speaking for the first time since arriving. Torres straightened, her command presence filling the room. "I'm reforming the Rapid Response Task Force with all of you as senior staff. Commander Chen, you'll be my tactical advisor. Your experience with unconventional warfare makes you the logical choice for analyzing these unknown vessels. Sarah felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders again, familiar and unwelcome. Admiral, I've been out of active service for 3 years. Surely there are more qualified. There are no more qualified officers. Torres cut her off sharply. You're the one who figured out how to fight the Korthak hive ships when everyone else said it was impossible. You developed the tactics that broke the Zephyrian blockade of Centauri, and you're the only person in this room who successfully commanded a fleet against an enemy we'd never encountered before. The memories came flooding back, despite Sarah's efforts to suppress them. The desperate battle above Kepler 442b, where human forces had been outnumbered 10-1. The moment when conventional tactics failed, and she'd had to think beyond everything she'd been taught. The terrible decision to ram the damaged cruiser Indomitable into the enemy flagship, knowing that 800 crew members would die, but that their sacrifice might save 8 million colonists on the planet below. I understand your reluctance, Torres continued more gently. We all hoped the wars were over. But these ships represent a threat we can't ignore. If they're hostile and we're not prepared. Sarah closed her eyes, seeing again the faces of her old crew, feeling the weight of every command decision she'd ever made. When she opened them, her voice was steady. What's our current force disposition? The question marked her acceptance, and Torres's slight smile showed she recognized it. Third Fleet is on patrol near Jupiter. Admiral Hassan has been recalled from the frontier station. We're mobilizing everything we can without completely stripping the outer colonies of protection. And if this is a diversion? Williams asked. What if the real attack comes from somewhere else while we're focused on these ships? Then we deal with that when it happens, Torres replied. Right now, these vessels are our primary concern. Commander Chen, I want you to review all the sensor data we have. Look for patterns, weaknesses, anything that might give us an advantage if negotiations fail. Sarah nodded, her mind already shifting into tactical analysis mode. I'll need access to the AI modeling systems and a team of xenobiology specialists. If these ships are alive, we need to understand how they think. Granted, you'll have whatever resources you need. Torres turned to address the entire group. Ladies and gentlemen, I won't lie to you. We're heading into unknown territory against an enemy we don't understand, but we've faced impossible odds before and prevailed. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt and overcome. As the briefing broke up and officers began filing out to their assigned duties, Torres caught Sarah's arm. A word in private? They waited until the room was empty before Torres spoke again. How are you really doing, Sarah? The reports say you've been living quietly, working civilian jobs. I've been trying to forget, Sarah said honestly. Trying to be normal? And has it worked? Sarah thought about her small apartment, her friendly co-workers, the simple pleasure of worrying about mundane problems. For a while. But normal isn't really an option for people like us, is it? Torres shook her head sadly. I'm afraid not. The galaxy keeps making sure of that. She paused, studying Sarah's face. I need to know you're ready for this. These ships, there's something about them that feels different from anything we've faced before. Worse, somehow. Sarah straightened, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settling around her like armor. I'm ready, Admiral. I may not want this, but I'm ready. Good. Because if my instincts are right, we're going to need every advantage we can get. Torres activated a secure comlink. All department heads report to your stations. This is now a priority alpha situation. As of this moment, the Terran Defense Corps is at full military readiness. As alarms began sounding throughout the base, Sarah realized that her quiet life was truly over. The galaxy had come calling again, and this time she had the feeling it wouldn't be satisfied with anything less than everything humanity had to give. The bridge of the Valiant felt like coming home. Sarah had commanded this heavy cruiser during the final battles of the frontier wars, and every surface held memories of desperate engagements and hard-won victories. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, but she could see the tension in their movements. They all knew what they were being asked to do. Commander Roberts, her former executive officer, had answered the recall to serve as her second-in-command again. His weathered face showed relief at having Sarah back in the captain's chair, but also concern about their mission. Intercept course plotted and laid in, he reported. We'll reach the Perseverance's projected position in 6 hours. The destroyers Hammer and Anvil are maintaining escort formation. Sarah studied the tactical display showing their small task force racing to intercept Admiral Hassan's compromised fleet. 3 ships against 43 were impossible odds under normal circumstances, but these weren't normal circumstances. The enemy ships wouldn't be expecting an attack from their own forces. "Any word from Dr. Vasquez on neural countermeasures?" she asked. Lieutenant Kim at the communications station shook her head. "Still working on it, Captain. She says the alien influence operates on frequencies that human technology can barely detect, let alone block." Sarah turned to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Torres, the Admiral's nephew and one of the best weapons specialists in the fleet. "Analysis of the Perseverance's armament?" "Standard loadout for a Titan-class carrier," he replied grimly. 60 fighters, defensive particle cannons, and enough firepower to level a small moon. If they're being controlled to fight a... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Sarah had helped design the tactics that made ships like the Perseverance so effective against alien forces. Now those same tactics would be used against humanity. "Captain," Roberts said quietly, "there might be another option. If we can get close enough, we could attempt a boarding action. Take control of their bridge, break whatever's influencing their crew." Sarah considered the suggestion. "How would we prevent our boarding party from being influenced themselves?" "Faraday suits," suggested Dr. Park from the science station. "If the alien influence operates on electromagnetic frequencies, the suits might provide some protection." It was a desperate plan, but Sarah had executed desperate plans before. "Make it happen. Prep a boarding team with full electromagnetic shielding, but we go in ready for the worst-case scenario." The hours passed slowly as they approached the intercept point. Sarah used the time to review everything they knew about the alien vessels and their apparent ability to control human minds. The more she studied the data, the more convinced she became that they were facing something unprecedented. "Captain," Lieutenant Kim called out suddenly, "we're receiving a transmission from the Perseverance. Admiral Hassan is requesting to speak with you." Sarah's blood ran cold. If Hassan was under alien control, this could be a trap. But she had to know what they were dealing with. "Put him through, but maintain shields and weapons ready." The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Hassan on the bridge of his flagship. He looked normal, alert, focused, completely in control. If Sarah didn't know better, she would never suspect anything was wrong. "Commander Chen," Hassan said with his familiar slight smile, "it's good to see you back in uniform. I understand you have concerns about my fleet's current mission. Admiral, with respect, your ships have been compromised by alien influence. You need to alter course immediately and return to Mars orbit." Hassan's expression didn't change. "I assure you, Commander, my crew and I are operating under our own free will. We've been tasked with escorting our new allies to Earth for first contact negotiations." The words chilled Sarah to the bone. Hassan clearly believed what he was saying, but the real Admiral would never refer to unknown alien entities as allies. The mental influence was more sophisticated than they'd realized. It wasn't controlling actions directly, but altering perceptions and memories. "Admiral, there are no scheduled first contact negotiations. These entities have shown no attempt at communication beyond neural scanning. You and your crews have been compromised." Hassan's smile widened slightly, and for a moment Sarah caught something alien in his expression. "I'm disappointed in you, Commander. I had hoped you would understand the opportunity these beings represent. They offer us something humanity has always lacked: true unity of purpose. Unity through mind control isn't unity, Admiral. It's slavery." "Is it?" Hassan leaned forward, his eyes taking on an unsettling intensity. "Imagine a world without conflict, without disagreement, without the chaos of individual desires. Our new allies can give us that peace." Sarah felt a chill as she realized the scope of what they were facing. The aliens weren't just controlling minds, they were converting them, making their victims genuinely believe in their cause. "Admiral Hassan is gone," she said quietly to Roberts. "Whatever's talking to us now, it's not him anymore." On the screen, the thing wearing Hassan's face continued speaking. "Join us, Commander Chen. Bring your ships alongside ours. Let us show you the peace that comes with surrender." Sarah cut the transmission and immediately turned to her crew. "All hands, this is the captain. We are now engaged in combat operations against a compromised human fleet. I know this goes against everything we've trained for, but remember, the people on those ships are no longer acting of their own free will. Our mission is to stop them from reaching Earth by any means necessary." The bridge crew acknowledged the orders with grim determination. These were veterans who had served with Sarah through the darkest days of the war. They trusted her judgment even when it led them into the impossible. "Contact the Hammer and Anvil," Sarah ordered. "Inform them that we're proceeding with Plan Alpha. Full stealth approach. Target the Perseverance's engines and communications array. We disable them first, then attempt the boarding action." As the Valiant and her escorts moved into attack formation, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing a line from which there might be no return. They were about to fire on their own people, their own ships, their own friends and colleagues. But as she looked at the tactical display showing Earth's position, vulnerable and undefended against this new threat, she knew there was no choice. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to make the hard decisions when survival was at stake. "All ships commence attack run," she ordered. "Remember, we're not fighting the crews. We're fighting for them." The Valiant's engines roared to full power as they began their desperate assault on the compromised human fleet. Behind them, the 6 alien vessels continued their steady approach toward Earth, their alien consciousness spreading like a virus through humanity's defenders. Sarah gripped the arms of her command chair and prepared to do the unthinkable. But as the first weapons fired and the impossible battle began, she couldn't help but wonder if they were already too late to save not just the crews of Hassan's fleet, but humanity itself. The first salvo from the Valiant's particle cannon struck the Perseverance's engine nacelles with surgical precision. Sarah had ordered her gunners to target specific systems, engines, communications, weapons, anything to disable the massive carrier without killing the crew. But as she watched the explosions bloom across her former colleague's ship, she knew that some casualties were inevitable. "Direct hit on target's main engines," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres. "They're venting plasma and losing speed." On the tactical display, the Perseverance began to drift, but the other ships in Hassan's fleet were already responding. 2 destroyers broke formation and accelerated toward the Valiant, their weapons charging. "Incoming missiles," called out the sensor operator. 18 warheads closing fast." Sarah's hands moved over her command console with practiced efficiency. "Point defense online. Evasive maneuvers pattern Delta. Hammer and Anvil. Engage those destroyers, but remember, disable, don't destroy." The bridge shook as the Valiant's defensive systems engaged the incoming missiles. Most were intercepted, but 3 made it through, their explosions sending shockwaves through the ship's hull. Sarah felt the familiar bite of acceleration as her pilot threw the ship into violent evasive maneuvers. "Captain," Roberts called out over the noise, "the boarding team is ready. But if we're going to do this, it has to be now while the Perseverance is disabled." Sarah nodded grimly. The boarding action was their only hope of saving Hassan and his crew. Launch boarding pods. Full electromagnetic shielding for all personnel. 8 armored pods shot from the Valiant's launch tubes, racing across the space between the 2 ships. Sarah watched anxiously as they approached the Perseverance's hull. If the alien influence could penetrate their Faraday suits, the boarding team would be lost before they even entered the enemy ship. "Pods making contact," reported the communications officer. "Breaching charges deployed." The tactical display showed the boarding team's progress as they cut through the Perseverance's hull and began moving toward the bridge. For several minutes, everything went according to plan. Then the reports started coming in. "Team leader reporting strange sensations," the communications officer said with concern. "Several team members are experiencing disorientation." Sarah's heart sank. The electromagnetic shielding wasn't enough. Whatever method the aliens used to influence human minds, it was more sophisticated than simple radio waves. "All boarding teams, abort mission and return to pods immediately," she ordered, but it was too late. "Captain, we're losing contact with the boarding team. Their suit telemetry is still active, but they're not responding to communications." On the screen, Sarah watched in horror as the boarding team's movement indicators showed them changing direction. Instead of fighting toward the bridge, they were now moving to assist the Perseverance's crew in restoring main power. "They've been turned," she said quietly. "Pull back all ships. We need a new plan." But as the Valiant began to withdraw, the tactical situation deteriorated rapidly. The destroyers they'd been fighting suddenly coordinated their attack patterns with inhuman precision. No longer fighting as individual ships, they moved like a single organism with multiple bodies. "They're sharing tactical data instantaneously," Torres observed with growing alarm. "No communication delays, no coordination errors. It's like they have one mind controlling all the ships." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The alien influence wasn't just controlling individual humans. It was creating a networked intelligence that used human ships and crews as extensions of itself. They weren't fighting Admiral Hassan's fleet anymore. They were fighting the alien entities directly. All ships, full retreat, she ordered. We can't win this engagement. As the Valiant and her escorts fled the battle zone, Sarah's mind raced through options. Traditional military tactics were useless against an enemy that could turn their own forces against them. They needed something the aliens wouldn't expect, something uniquely human. "Captain," Lieutenant Kim called out urgently. "We're receiving a transmission from Luna Base. Admiral Torres wants to speak with you immediately." Torres appeared on the main screen, her face drawn with exhaustion and stress. "Commander, report on the engagement." "Mission failure, Admiral. The alien influence is more pervasive than we thought. They've created a networked intelligence using human crews as components. Hassan's entire fleet is compromised, and they're continuing toward Earth." Torres closed her eyes briefly. "Dr. Vasquez may have found something. She's discovered that the alien influence operates through quantum entanglement at the neural level. It's not electromagnetic, it's quantum mechanical." Sarah felt a spark of hope. "Can she block it?" "Possibly. But it would require exposing test subjects to the influence first, mapping the quantum signatures. It's extremely dangerous." "I'll do it," Sarah said without hesitation. "If there's a chance to develop countermeasures." "Absolutely not," Torres cut her off. "I need you operational. Dr. Vasquez is working with volunteers from the medical staff." The screen flickered as another communication came through. Dr. Vasquez appeared in a smaller window alongside. "Torres," her face pale but determined. "Commander Chen, I think I understand how the influence works," she said rapidly. "It's not mind control in the traditional sense. The aliens are creating quantum entanglements between their consciousness and human neural networks. The victims retain their personalities and memories, but their decision-making processes become aligned with alien objectives." Sarah leaned forward. "Can you break the entanglements?" "Theoretically, yes, but it requires exposing the victims to a specific quantum resonance pattern. The problem is we don't know what that pattern is. We need someone who's been influenced but has somehow maintained their independence." An idea began forming in Sarah's mind. Dangerous, possibly suicidal, but their only hope. "Doctor, what if someone voluntarily exposed themselves to the influence but had a way to resist it?" "Could you use that to map the quantum signatures?" "It's possible, but extremely risky. The volunteer would need incredible mental discipline to maintain their sense of self while being actively subverted." Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These people had followed her through impossible battles, trusted her with their lives, believed in her ability to find solutions where none existed. Now she was contemplating something that might cost her everything. "Admiral, I request permission to proceed with the volunteer exposure protocol." Torres stared at her in shock. "Commander, you can't be serious. If you're compromised, we lose our best tactical officer." "If we don't break this influence, we lose everything." Sarah replied steadily. "Admiral, I've made the hard decisions before. Let me make one more." The silence stretched between them as Torres weighed the impossible choice. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Very well, but we do this under controlled conditions with every possible safeguard. Dr. Vasquez, prepare your equipment. Commander Chen, you have 6 hours to develop a resistance protocol." As the communication ended, Sarah realized she was about to voluntarily surrender her mind to an alien consciousness in the hope of saving humanity. It was perhaps the most terrifying decision she'd ever made. But as she looked at the tactical display showing the compromised fleet approaching Earth, she knew it was also the most necessary. The quiet life she'd wanted would have to wait a little longer. Right now, humanity needed her to be brave enough to lose herself in order to save everyone else. The medical bay of Luna Base had been transformed into something resembling a combination laboratory and interrogation chamber. Dr. Vasquez worked frantically, alongside a team of quantum physicists and neuroscientists, setting up equipment that Sarah didn't fully understand but trusted would give them their only chance. Sarah lay on the medical table, sensors attached to her head and chest while technicians made final adjustments to the monitoring systems. The plan was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. Expose her to the alien influence while mapping every neural and quantum signature, then hope she could resist long enough for the scientists to develop countermeasures. The quantum entanglement detector is calibrated. Dr. Park reported from his console. "We'll be able to track the exact moment the influence attempts to establish contact with your neural patterns." Admiral Torres stood nearby, her face reflecting the weight of sending one of her best officers into unknown danger. "Commander, you can still change your mind. We could find another volunteer." Sarah shook her head. "With respect, Admiral, we need someone with experience making critical decisions under pressure. If I'm going to resist this thing, I need to understand how it thinks." Dr. Vasquez approached with a small device that looked like a modified communications unit. "This will emit the same quantum signatures we detected from the alien vessels. The moment you feel any change in your thought patterns, any unusual urges or perceptions, you need to tell us immediately. How long do I need to maintain contact?" "Unknown. Could be minutes, could be hours. The volunteers who've been exposed so far showed changes within the first 10 minutes, but you're attempting conscious resistance." Sarah took a deep breath and nodded. "Begin the procedure." The device activated with a barely audible hum. For the first few moments, Sarah felt nothing unusual. Then gradually she became aware of something else in her mind. A presence that wasn't quite thoughts, but wasn't quite external either. "Contact established," she reported, her voice steady despite the alien sensation spreading through her consciousness. "I can feel it trying to map my neural pathways." On the monitors around her, cascading data showed the quantum entanglement process in real time. Dr. Vasquez and her team worked frantically to record every detail of the alien influence. The presence in Sarah's mind grew stronger, and she began to understand why Hassan and his crew had been so easily converted. The influence didn't feel hostile or invasive. It felt like coming home, like finding a missing piece of herself that she'd never known was absent. "It's not attacking my thoughts," she reported with growing amazement. "It's completing them, making me feel whole in a way I've never experienced." "That's the conversion process," Dr. Vasquez said urgently. "It's making you believe that surrendering your independence is a positive thing. You need to fight it." But fighting proved more difficult than Sarah had anticipated. The alien presence wasn't trying to override her personality. It was enhancing it, making her feel more capable, more confident, more at peace than she'd been since the end of the war. For the first time in years, the nightmares and guilt from her military service seemed to fade away. "I understand now," she said dreamily. "They're not conquerors. They're healers. They want to help us transcend our limitations, our conflicts, our pain." "Commander," Torres' sharp voice cut through the growing euphoria. "Remember your training. Remember your crew. Remember Earth." The words struck something deep in Sarah's consciousness. Images flashed through her mind. Her apartment on Earth, Mrs. Patterson's friendly smile, the children playing in the market, Jake Martinez and her co-workers at the shipping depot. All the normal, ordinary people living normal, ordinary lives that would be lost if the alien influence spread to Earth. "No," she said firmly, her voice regaining strength. "I won't surrender what makes us human." The alien presence pressed harder, flooding her mind with visions of a perfect world without war, without suffering, without the chaos of individual desires. She saw herself commanding fleets not for destruction but for protection, using her tactical skills to guide humanity into a golden age of peace and prosperity. "Very tempting," she admitted through gritted teeth. "But peace without choice isn't peace, it's surrender." "Quantum patterns shifting," Dr. Park called out. "The influence is adapting to her resistance." Sarah felt the change immediately. The gentle persuasion was replaced by something more aggressive, more insistent. The alien consciousness was trying to forcibly rewrite her neural patterns, and the sensation was like having her skull filled with white-hot metal. "It's getting angry," she managed to say. "It doesn't understand why I won't accept the gift it's offering." "Hold on, Commander," Dr. Vasquez urged. "We're getting incredible data." Just a few more minutes, but Sarah could feel her resistance weakening. The alien influence was learning from each attempt, adapting its approach, finding weaknesses in her mental defenses. Memories of the war, the friends she'd lost, the impossible decisions she'd made, the weight of command, were being twisted into reasons why she should surrender to the collective. "Why do you resist?" The voice wasn't audible but seemed to come from inside her own thoughts. "We offer peace. We offer unity. We offer an end to the pain of choice." "Because," Sarah gasped, "the pain of choice is what makes us human. Without it, we're just biological machines. You will understand. In time, You will see the beauty of surrender. Sarah felt her grip on her own identity beginning to slip. The alien consciousness was overwhelming, ancient and vast beyond human comprehension. How could one person's will stand against something that had conquered countless civilizations across the galaxy? Then she remembered something Dr. Vasquez had said about the influence creating quantum entanglements. If the aliens were linking minds across space and time, that connection worked both ways. They weren't just taking from her, she was taking from them. With tremendous effort, Sarah stopped resisting and instead opened her mind fully to the alien presence. She felt it rush in, triumphant, beginning the final conversion process. But in that moment of complete connection, she also gained access to the collective consciousness that controlled the vast ships. What she found there horrified her beyond anything she'd experienced in the war. "I can see them," she whispered, her voice filled with terror and revulsion. "The civilizations they've saved. Billions of beings living in perfect harmony, perfect peace, perfect emptiness. They're not dead, but they're not alive either. They're just functioning." Through the alien network, she saw world after world of converted populations, beings that had once been vibrant, chaotic, beautifully flawed individuals now reduced to components in a galactic machine. They were happy, content, peaceful, and utterly soulless. "This is what they want for humanity," she said with growing horror. "Not death, not slavery, extinction of everything that makes us who we are." But the knowledge came with a price. The deeper she delved into the alien consciousness, the more it learned about humanity. She could feel it analyzing her memories, her emotions, her connections to other humans. It was learning how to be more persuasive, more effective in its conversion techniques. "Doctor," she called out desperately, "I can't hold this much longer. Do you have what you need?" "Almost there," Vasquez replied. "We're mapping the quantum signatures now. Just hold on." Sarah felt the alien consciousness beginning to close around her like a vice. In moments, she would be just another component in its vast network, her individuality dissolved into the collective. But she'd learned something crucial in her brief contact with the alien minds. "The network," she managed to say as her consciousness began to fade. "It's not just controlling our people, it's vulnerable through them. If you can reverse the quantum entanglement, the feedback will travel back through the network. You can hurt them. We've got it," Dr. Park shouted. Quantum signature mapped and countermeasures ready. Dr. Vasquez activated the reversal protocol, and Sarah felt the alien presence torn away from her mind like a physical amputation. She screamed as her individual consciousness reasserted itself, the loss of the collective's false peace more painful than any physical wound. But as the medical team worked to stabilize her, Sarah smiled through her tears. They had their weapon now, humanity's greatest strength. The stubborn refusal to surrender their chaotic, painful, beautiful individuality would become their salvation. The aliens had made a mistake in trying to convert her. They'd given her a glimpse of their true nature, and now she knew exactly how to fight them. Recovery from the alien influence took Sarah 3 days, but the intelligence she'd gained made every moment of suffering worthwhile. As she sat in the tactical planning room of Luna Base, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching enemy fleet, she finally understood what they were truly fighting. "The collective isn't just a hive mind," she explained to the assembled commanders. "It's a self-perpetuating system that feeds on individuality. Every species it converts becomes part of a vast network designed to find and assimilate other civilizations. They've been doing this for millions of years across the galaxy." Admiral Torres leaned forward. "And the countermeasures?" Dr. Vasquez activated a holographic display showing quantum waveforms. "We can reverse the entanglement process, but it requires precise calibration to each individual's neural patterns. More importantly, Commander Chen discovered that the network itself is vulnerable to feedback." Sarah stood and walked to the tactical display. "During my contact with the collective, I learned that all the converted beings remain connected across space and time. If we can generate the right quantum resonance, essentially a virus in their network, we can disrupt the entire system." "How do we deliver this virus?" asked Captain Martinez. "Through Admiral Hassan's fleet," Sarah replied grimly. "They're still connected to the collective. If we can get close enough to transmit the disruption signal through their quantum entanglement, it will propagate back through the entire network." Commander Roberts raised an obvious concern. "That means we have to engage the compromised fleet again." And this time they'll be expecting us, Sarah nodded. Which is why we're not going to fight them. We're going to surrender. The room erupted in shocked voices, but Torres held up a hand for silence. Explain, Commander. The Collective wants to convert us, not destroy us. They see humanity as another species to be added to their network. If we approach under a flag of surrender, they'll try to convert our crews rather than destroy our ships. That gives us the opportunity to get close enough to transmit the virus. You're talking about sacrificing entire crews, Major Okafor said quietly. I'm talking about volunteers who understand the risks, Sarah corrected. And thanks to Dr. Vasquez's work, we now have temporary neural shielding that can resist the influence for limited periods. Dr. Vasquez confirmed this with a nod. The shielding will last approximately 30 minutes before breaking down. After that, the volunteers will be converted unless the virus successfully disrupts the network. Torres studied the tactical projections. What are our chances of success? Unknown, Sarah admitted. We're essentially attempting to crash a computer system that spans multiple star systems using a program we've had 3 days to develop. But it's the only chance we have. The debate continued for hours, but eventually, the impossible nature of their situation made the decision for them. Earth's defenses couldn't stop the alien ships, and traditional military tactics were useless against an enemy that could turn human crews into weapons. 12 hours later, Sarah stood on the bridge of the Valiant as it approached Admiral Hassan's fleet. Behind her flew 24 volunteers in ships equipped with the quantum disruption device. Each volunteer knew they might not survive the mission, but they also knew that failure meant the end of human civilization as they knew it. Incoming transmission from the Perseverance, reported Lieutenant Kim. Admiral Hassan wants to speak with you. Sarah took a deep breath. Put him through. Hassan appeared on the main screen, but Sarah could now see the subtle signs of alien influence in his expression. The too perfect calm, the slight delay in his responses, the inhuman precision in his movements. Commander Chen, he said with false warmth, I'm pleased to see you've decided to join us. The Collective is eager to welcome humanity into the greater unity. We've come to negotiate terms of surrender, Sarah lied smoothly, but we want to discuss this in person. Permission to come aboard? Hassan's alien-influenced mind considered the request. Of course. We will prepare Docking Bay 7 for your arrival. Come alone, Commander. The Collective wishes to speak with you personally. The transmission ended, and Sarah turned to her crew. You know the plan. The moment I'm aboard the Perseverance, begin transmission of the virus. If I'm not back in 25 minutes, assume I've been converted and proceed with the backup plan. Roberts nodded grimly. The backup plan involved destroying both fleets to prevent the alien influence from spreading further. It was a last resort that would cost thousands of lives but might save billions. The shuttle trip to the Perseverance felt surreal. Sarah was voluntarily walking into the enemy's hands, carrying humanity's last hope in a device no larger than a communication unit. As she approached the massive carrier that had once been humanity's pride, she couldn't help but think about how much her life had changed from the quiet shipping clerk she'd tried to become. Hassan met her in the docking bay, flanked by crew members whose vacant expressions confirmed their conversion. Welcome aboard, Commander. The Collective is most interested in your unique perspective. As they walked through the familiar corridors of the Perseverance, Sarah activated the concealed transmitter in her uniform. The quantum virus began broadcasting immediately, seeking the entanglement signatures that connected the human crews to their alien masters. You know, Hassan said conversationally as they walked, the Collective finds your species fascinating. Most civilizations surrender quickly once they understand the peace we offer, but humans seem determined to cling to their chaos and conflict. It's what makes us human, Sarah replied, monitoring the transmitter's progress on her concealed display. The virus was propagating through the network, but slowly. She needed more time. They entered the bridge, where Sarah saw the true horror of what the aliens had done. The crew moved with mechanical precision, their faces showing no emotion, no individuality, no spark of the people they'd once been. They were alive but not living, conscious but not aware. Magnificent, isn't it? Hassan said, following her gaze. Perfect efficiency, perfect cooperation, perfect peace. Soon all of humanity will know this tranquility. Sarah felt the alien presence pressing at the edges of her consciousness, seeking entry despite her neural shielding. And what happens to the chaos and creativity that makes humans useful to the collective? It will be refined, controlled, used for the greater good rather than wasted on individual desires. The transmitter indicated that the virus had reached critical penetration of the network. Sarah smiled grimly. I think you'll find that human chaos is harder to control than you expect. Hassan's expression flickered, confusion replacing the alien certainty. Around the bridge, crew members began shaking their heads as if waking from a deep sleep. The virus was working, disrupting the quantum entanglements that bound them to the collective. What have you done? Hassan demanded, his voice losing its artificial calm. I've given humanity a fighting chance, Sarah replied. Your network depends on the beings you've converted remaining connected. But we've developed a way to sever those connections. The effect spread rapidly through the ship as the virus propagated back through the quantum network to the alien vessels themselves. On the main screen, Sarah could see the 6 massive ships beginning to drift. Their perfect formations breaking apart as the collective consciousness that controlled them was disrupted. But the victory came with a price. The feedback from the collapsing network was affecting every connected being, including the recently converted human crews. Some were recovering their individuality, but others were experiencing catastrophic neural damage as their minds tried to cope with the sudden disconnection. Medical teams to all ships, Sarah called into her communicator. We have casualties from neural feedback. Prioritize life support and mental stabilization. Admiral Hassan collapsed to his knees, his face contorting with pain and confusion. What? Where am I? Commander, what happened? The last thing I remember, Sarah knelt beside him, checking his vital signs. You were under alien influence, Admiral. We've broken the connection, but you're going to need medical attention. Around them, the bridge crew was showing similar signs of recovery and disorientation. Some were crying, others were vomiting. All were struggling to process the experience of having their minds violated, and then suddenly returned to them. Status report. Tora's voice came through Sarah's communicator. Mission successful, Admiral. The virus has disrupted the alien network. Their ships are drifting powerless and our crews are being freed from the influence. But we have significant casualties from neural feedback. Understood. Medical ships are standing by. As the immediate crisis passed, Sarah realized that humanity had won more than just a battle. They'd proven that their chaotic, individualistic nature, the very thing that made them difficult to govern and prone to conflict, was also their greatest strength. When faced with an enemy that sought to eliminate that chaos, humans had found a way to weaponize their own stubborn independence. The alien ships, now powerless and drifting, would be studied and eventually understood. The threat they represented was ended, but the knowledge they contained would help humanity prepare for whatever other challenges the galaxy might hoonth later. Sarah stood in her small apartment making coffee and looking out at the morning rush of